Afternoon, vinyl community, or morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. Yeah, it's Rob back for another video. It's Sunday afternoon. I'm in the Pink Attic again. Yeah, battered again by good old Storm Dennis. I love the way they give them these kind of cute names, as if it kind of makes them easier to kind of deal with, you know. Yeah, it's very, very windy again, wet, a lot of flooding around. So yeah, we're getting hit quite hard at the moment. But I made my way over here with my son and my mum's, of course. Yeah, everything's hunky-dory and okay. So no problems there. Anyway, I digress once again. This is a response video to Rob Walker's excellent video that he posted recently about his top 20 albums from his favorite year, which in his case was 1979. And he showed some great albums, you know, definitely agreed on quite a few of those there. Some I wasn't so familiar with, which always makes it interesting. And then Richard McCook also did a response and covered the year 1973, which was his favourite. And yeah, he threw the gauntlet down once again and said, "Why don't you do a response?" So I thought, yeah, why not? I mean, it's not something I'd really kind of given an awful lot of thought to about in terms of what my favorite year was. But when I thought about it, it was the year that I've actually elected for is significant for a number of reasons. Partly because it was the year when I sort of, I guess, started to become aware of music. My brother was 12 years old at the time. He just started to get into music. Obviously, being 6 years older than me, he had friends and peers that were, you know, starting to listen to a lot of contemporary music that was around at the time. And I used to just sort of pick up on it, you know, listen outside the door, and you know, because I was the younger brother who was not allowed to, you know, to kind of cramp his style, as is the way with siblings, younger siblings anyway. But I guess, but yeah, it started a love for music. I was already listening to music that my mum and dad were listening to, which is a lot of classical. I mentioned on an earlier video, Beatles' Oldies But Goldies was probably the first LP that I ever really remember getting into, certainly pop album. And that had a huge effect on me, you know, as I'm sure it did with millions of others who heard the Beatles for the first time. But yeah, and it was a kind of stirring within me that I knew I loved music and I was desperate to find out more. So what's the year in question? Well, the year is actually 1974. Okay, and when I checked through my collection, I realised that I had probably more albums from that year than any other, you know, any other time, decade, you know, 60s, 80s, whatever, you know, than any other year, really. So, you know, it seemed very apt that, you know, I should pick it as my favorite year. So, yeah, I'm going to, what I've got is I've got a stack here. There's, I'm not strictly speaking, sticking quite to Rob's remit, which was 20. But I'm probably not going to show as many as Richard showed, so it's going to be sort of somewhere in between. And I'm going to try and rattle through them fairly quickly, you know, because you don't want to be listening to me rambling on for half an hour, which is what I've done on previous videos. If it does go that long, I apologise in advance if I get carried away. Yeah, some I'll talk a little bit about, others I'll be fairly brief with. So, okay, so we kick off with this one, which is Randy Newman, Good Old Boys. Yeah, this is, I've got a few Randy Newman albums, but this was his 74 release. Obviously quite controversial with the song Rednecks. I think, you know, perhaps the establishment and some people at the time probably didn't get the irony behind that. But yeah, it's a great album. Mr. President, Have Pity on the Working Man. Yeah, Every Man a King. Guilty is great. Marie, beautiful ballad. Yeah, it's a good album. So that's my first one, Randy Newman, Good Old Boys. Okay, moving on quickly. Got quite a few Alan Price albums. I like the Alan Price set as well. This was it's obviously another solo one of his from 74. It's called Between Today and Yesterday. There's obviously illustration of the past and present. But it's, yeah, the first side is called Yesterday. The second side is Today. So it's, yeah, very much sort of autobiographical. I think it's got the single on, which I think was Jarrow's song, you know, about his life growing up as a Geordie boy. But yeah, it's a wonderful album, you know, Alan Price, sort of jazzy, you know, very sort of jazzy, good time, pop, upbeat. And yeah, that's a nice one of his. So I do like that. Next one is one I remember my brother had, again, one of these ones that I used to listen to as a kid. He had this. This is the Moody Blues. This was the best of their album output from Days of Future Past up to Seventh Sojourn, so 67 to 73. Yeah, I mean, you see this album all over the place. It's very common. This is a really minty copy that I was lucky enough to pick up for a few quid. So, but yeah, I mean, it's almost like, you know, for me, you know, I wouldn't need all the albums. This has got pretty much covers all their best era. And it's quite nice the way they sequence them all together. They sort of segue into one another. So, you know, it's like sort of continuous music as such. But yeah, that's a good one. And this is the Moody Blues. Next one, wonderful album. Great swan song from Ian Hunter with Mott. This is their album, The Hoople. Yeah, and I love that cover as well, with all their images in the girl's hair there. This is a absolute 70s glam classic, although it's probably not doing it enough justice to say that it's a glam album. Obviously, it would get labelled with that because of the time period that it was released in. But yeah, I mean, this has just got some of his, in my mind, some of his greatest songs. And Golden Age of Rock and Roll, Marionette is immense, fantastic song. Alice, Born Late 58, a great way to start. Open Side 2, that was a single. Trudy's song, beautiful. As we Through the Looking Glass, and great arrangements, and then ending up with Roll Away the Stone, with the lovely Lindsay DePaul singing "I Got My Invite" on the back of that. So yeah, that's an absolute stone cold classic. Great album. Next one's probably in my top 2 or 3 live albums of all time. And this is, apart from Moondance, this is probably my favourite. This is, of course, Too Late to Stop Now, Van Morrison. Yeah, probably cited as one of the greatest live albums of all time. I mean, this is a reissue, and it just sounds fantastic. It's just so well recorded. But the performances are just stellar, from him arguably in his best period. Help Me, Warm Love, these blues, it was Bring It On Home, Listen to the Lion, fantastic, from St. Dominic's Preview. And then a couple of his older ones on record 2, side 2, Here Comes the Night, Gloria, yeah, and then a wonderful extended version of Caravan, which is probably my favourite song of his. Superb, yeah, wonderful album. Okay, then we're moving into a bit of Joni. recorded in 73 but released at the start of 74. This is her album Court and Spark. I think her most commercial set. Obviously you've got these great songs on side one. The whole of side one is fantastic. You've got Court and Spark, and then the singles Help Me and Free Man in Paris. Just, yeah, wonderful. Sort of start of her, when she's kind of starting to move into the sort of the jazzy, more jazzy kind of leanings, less folky. But yeah, it is a great album. There's not a bad song on this. That's Court and Spark, Joni Mitchell. Okay, quickly on. Changing it up big time. We've got an ambient classic from Kraftwerk, Autobahn. Yeah, I love this album. I wouldn't say I'm a huge Kraftwerk fan. I don't really have anything else by them. I love the model. I used to have a single, the 45 of that when that came out, because I did enjoy that. But this is just wonderful. Late night, you know, you drift off to this. The sounds on this. Obviously, it was quite a groundbreaking album for the time period as well. You know, yeah, great stuff from Kraftwerk. Okay, probably not one of my favourites of theirs, but it's 74, so I've put it in here. This is Jethro Tull's War Child. Obviously, this was recorded. Sorry, I'm just a bit uncomfortable here, just trying to get comfy. This is War Child, which is the album that they released straight after Passion Play, which was, you know, sort of obviously a huge progressive outing, you know, with, again, like Thick as a Brick, you know, one song extended over, you know, two sides of a record. So this was definitely very much a get back to basics and a more pop vein. It's got the single Skating Away, On the Thin Ice of a New Day, and Bungle in the Jungle. Yeah, it's not bad. I actually like the title track, War Child. That's probably my favourite on this. But that's Jethro Tull and War Child. Okay, this is an interesting one. I picked this up fairly recently. It's a 74 album. This is Claire Hamill and Stage Door Johnnies. Now the reason I was attracted to this is because it was actually produced by Ray Davis, and yeah, it's quite a nice album. It's like a kind of, you know, sort of almost like sort of club, like a late night club kind of feel. Sort of, yeah, nice songs. I haven't spun it an awful lot, so I'm not that familiar with it. But yeah, it's a decent record, and it's another one from 74, so I'll put that one in. Okay, now the next few just absolute classics, and these go back to albums that my brother in particular really liked from this year, and he used to play a lot. The second one I'm going to show is probably my all-time favourite of theirs, and yeah, it's just absolute classic. So we've got first one's Queen 2. This came out at the start of 74, February, I think. Yeah, and this is Queen's foray, one and only foray into prog. But yeah, great gatefold with the band there. This is a Fame reissue from the 80s. I think I did used to have an earlier pressing of this at one stage. But yeah, I mean, that particularly side 2, which is just all Mercury. It's almost like a suite in its own right. You know, it starts with the epic Ogre Battle, Fairy Fellow Master Stroke, which was based on that Richard Dadd painting. So I suppose being an art student, that very much appealed to Freddie's sensibilities. Nevermore, beautiful ballad, wonderful lilting, almost like a lullaby. March of the Black Queen obviously is the epic on that side. Just the production on that, I think they just went all out on this album, didn't they, to go for it. Funny How Love is obviously the the Phil Spector Wall of Sound, and then ending, what a way to end the album, the first hit, Seven Seas of Rye, with that, just the wonderful piano motif at the start, which I never get sick of listening to. It's just wonderful. Fabulous. And then, of course, if that wasn't enough, later on that year, they came out with a second album, which is this one, Sheer Heart Attack. This is arguably my favourite of theirs. It's, other than the greatest hits, which I bought when it came out at the time, this was the first of their studio albums that I bought, and it's remained a firm favourite ever since. I can remember my brother playing this when I was younger, and I used to hear this, and just the songs are just fantastic. I mean, particularly the opening two. I mean, you've got Brighton Rock. I mean, how visceral is that? With the guitaring and the sort of echoplex and, the sound, the solo on it. Huge. And then, of course, Killer Queen, which is, sort of jazzy, backwards, sort of almost like 20s, 30s kind of jazzy, I don't know, Marlene Dietrich possibly or something, would have done something, but quite obviously high camp, but very Freddie. Tenement Funster, wonderful rocker from Roger Taylor. Lily of the Valley, Now I'm Here, fantastic single, big powerful one. Apparently my brother played that. It's a bit of a story. If he watches this, he'd probably be really embarrassed. But by all accounts, my brother played that with his mate on tennis rackets in assembly at school. Great that the school let them do that. I'd like to think that that's a true story. I don't know. Maybe that's just something that's, they're maybe just talking about and just having a laugh about, and wouldn't that be great if we did that? So whether or not that's true, and I don't know, but it's, I like to think that they did do that. Just again, the second side, Stone Cold Craze, Lap of the Gods. Probably my favourite track of all is the last one, In the Lap of the Gods Revisited. A beautiful song from Mercury, that is. It's so easy, but I can't do it, so risky, but I got to chance it. So funny there's nothing to laugh about. I mean, it's just like a timeless classic, and it's just too short. I wish it just went on longer. I know you got the whoa, whoa, la, 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 which is beautiful, but I just wish there was more verse. But yeah, Sheer Heart Attack, fabulous. Probably my favourite from that year. Next one is an artist that doesn't get showed very much at all on the VC. He does get mentioned every now and again, but I don't think anybody's ever featured him. And this is Roy Harper. And this is the live album that he did from 74, Flashes from the Archives of Oblivion. This was my first foray into Roy Harper. My friend had some friends in Edgbaston in Birmingham that were big fans of Roy, and he'd actually been to see him live, and he came back, and I think it was when his album Whatever Happened to Jugular came out, so that was 85, I think, with Jimmy Page, and he soon after got a copy of this, and I listened to it, and it was the first time I'd ever heard Roy, and it was just amazing. I'd never heard a guitar player play the way that he did. I mean, this was before I'd heard, his contemporaries like Al Stewart, I'd never heard, or Bert Jansch. So his style of playing, with the detunings and weird tunings, and his picking technique was just like, for me, it was just absolutely out there. And these beautiful, lyrical, just so poetic, use the cliche Dylan-esque, but that's not probably, giving him justice, because he's a unique talent in his own right, even though obviously somebody like Dylan would have been a huge influence. But yeah, I've got a few Roy Harper albums, and they're all wonderful. He's a unique artist, and I'm sure there's a lot of you out there that are aware of him. But I would urge anybody who doesn't have any Roy Harper in their collection to seek his stuff out. I believe he stopped touring this year. I haven't actually seen him live for quite a long time, many years, but I saw him probably half a dozen times over the years and through the 80s and 90s. And yeah, he's wonderful. He's a one-off. Yeah, fantastic album. Next one, I've got this out, which is just the album called Hollies. I think this might have been a bit of a comeback album for them. Not a lot to say about this, really. Obviously, far and away the best track on here is The Air That I Breathe, which was the monster hit off this. Yeah, but it's a decent listen. It's well produced, but very much of its time. And that's the Hollies. Very quickly, because I featured this in an earlier video, Genesis, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. Yeah, a wonderful concept album. Peter Gabriel's last, last foray with the band. Left pretty much after the tour for this album. But yeah, fantastic concept album. It's arguably probably my favourite in their catalogue, although it was probably one of the last ones that I heard, certainly of the Gabriel output. Yeah, but I really love this album. And for those who haven't heard it, I strongly recommend you get a copy. And, you got a couple of hours spare, put it on, and you need to play it end to end, really. It's not one of these ones you can just pick out individual tracks. You need to hear it in its entirety. But yeah, superb. Next one, a bit of a tie-in with Jethro Tull earlier on. Ian Anderson. This is Ian Anderson produced album Steeleye Span, Now We Are Six. I think that alludes to the fact that a couple of members had left when this album came out. After Parcel of Rogues, which is the 73 album, which was arguably my favourite of theirs. This is all right, not bad, not their best, but yeah, and obviously it's got decent production on it, courtesy of Ian Anderson. So yeah, that's Steeleye Span, Now We Are Six. Next one is Cat Stevens, Buddha and the Chocolate Box. I probably prefer some of his earlier output. Mona Bola Jakin is probably my favourite of his, or Tea for the Tillerman. But this is all right. This is from '74. I think my favourite on this, if I remember, I haven't played this for a while. King of Trees, I think I quite liked. The first track, Music, quite nice. But yeah, he was possibly going a bit, by this stage, he was on a bit of a downward curve, probably getting more into his sort of esoteric kind of leanings and so on, and religious distractions and so on that obviously then took over his life, obviously in later years. So, but yes, decent album. Next one is probably arguably their best album, Supertramp, Crime of the Century. I'm sure you've all got this. I love the hype stickers on it. Virgin Top 50 album, £2 off RRRP. Yeah, and the date of it is actually 79, so I dare say this was probably reissued after Breakfast in America with the popularity of that. But I think this is where it all started for them and when they hit the big time. School's great, Bloody Well Right. Dreamer, the single, great. It's just a great album, start to finish. And yeah, probably their best. I'm not going to talk too much about this one, although I could do an entire video because I love this album. This is Sheet Music, of course. Second album. I spoke about this on my introduction video, but yeah, this is definitely my favourite album by Tencc. I love every single track on this. If I picked out favourites, it would probably be Worst Band in the World, Old Wild Men, and Somewhere in Hollywood. But yeah, I love this album. and it's dirt cheap, as is all Tencc's albums. You can pick them up everywhere, you know, a couple of quid. You know, you shouldn't have to pay more than that. And certainly their first 4 or 5 albums are definitely worth investigating. So yeah. Okay, moving on quickly again, we've got arguably Tangerine Dream's breakthrough album. I think this was their first on Virgin, was it? This is Phaedra. I love this album. This is another one you can kind of drift off to late at night. Wonderful airbrush cover. I think his wife used to do these. Edgar Froese's wife used to do these. This is a really awful copy. I need to get an upgrade of this sometime. But it is a first or second press on this wonderful Virgin label. I love that label. Yeah, definitely one of my favourites. Beautiful. I've cleaned this dozens of times, but of course, being an ambient album, it's like all the Brian Eno's and stuff like that. You need to get them in good condition because you don't want pops and whistles when you're listening to quiet music. Okay, moving on even quicker. Couple of huge albums that I've loved for many years. Sparks, Kimono My House. This again was a breakthrough for them. Obviously, you've got This Town Is Big Enough for Both of Us, Amateur Hour, yeah, fabulous stuff, quirky, wonderful, idiosyncratic pop, courtesy of the Mail Brothers. And then they, I don't know whether they aced themselves, but they certainly equaled it with this, which came up later the same year, Propaganda. Yeah, I mean, this is just great. I mean, considering they were touring just constantly in '74, the fact that they managed to write and do this as well, it's amazing, you know, clearly at the peak of their powers. But yeah, I mean, this has got great tracks on. Never Turn Your Back on Mother Earth is probably my favourite. But Propaganda, little a cappella at the start's great. At Home, At Work, At Play. Don't Leave Me Alone with Her. Something for the Girl with Everything. Yeah, just full of great tunes. And I'm going to show this one because this didn't come out in '74, but this was a reissue, I guess, re-released on the back of the success of Kimono My House. So this is actually '74. This is Sparks. I'm not sure if this was called A Woofer in Tweeter's Clothing or not. I don't know. I'm not sure. But this is, I think this is it's a repackaging of their first album. I think when they were called Half Nelson. I'll have to do a bit more research on that to be absolutely sure. But this is, this is kind of nothing like, their island stuff. You know, this is very angular, weird. In some cases, it's produced by Todd Rundgren, so I guess that goes a long way to explaining why it is the way it is. It's not bad. It's not in the same caliber as the two that I've just shown, but interesting. And obviously, this is, I guess, where they started. So, yeah, okay. Just a couple more now. We've got Traffic's last studio album, When the Eagle Flies. This is an original press, but I have got this on the box set that I had at Christmas, which are like represses and repackaging of all their studio albums. But this is great. This is, they were really getting into their jazzy stuff by this stage, but still got those sort of slight psychedelic tinges. Steve Winwood's voice is still as good as always. You know, he's so consistent. And, it was clearly the musical genius of the band. But yeah, I really like this. I probably don't like it as much as Mr. Fantasy or John Barleycorn. John Barleycorn Must Die. But, for me, the quality of their albums is pretty consistent. Yeah, and that's a decent listen. Okay, the last one is I guess what we call a bits and pieces album. This is Odds and Sods by The Who. This came out 74. This was, I think, compiled by John Entwistle from tapes that he'd found, and it stems bits from late 60s, B-sides, unreleased, as the title suggests, Odds and Sods. This is an American pressing, and it's on this kind of, it's got this kind of gimmicks cover, which is probably difficult to show, but it's kind of die cut here, and there's a kind of poster and image of the band inside. I can't get it out at the moment anyway, but yeah, so I really like this. It's got some interesting tracks on it, and you know, it's you know, it's quality. You know, as you know, the Who were 60s and 70s output was pretty good. So yeah, that's it, guys. That's my 1974 year wrapped up. As I say, probably my favourite year for music, by virtue of the fact that I've probably got more albums from 74 than any other year, and of course the link with you know, because it takes me back to albums that came out that year that I used to listen to as a kid that my brother had. So sort of poignancy from there. I really apologise. I've gone far too late once again. 31 minutes. Oh my God. I completely understand if I've lost half of you or most of you by now, because I didn't intend it to go on this long. So I really apologise for that. But yeah, great idea anyway. And thanks to Rob for coming up with the idea for this video. Great. And yeah, so anyway, guys, enjoy what's left of the weekend. And yeah, I'll say cheers. I'm back on the beer today, but you know, it's only the one. So there you go. Cheers, guys. All the best. Take care. Bye.